Hi everybody, good afternoon from Cologne and welcome to EASA's SMS Q&A webinar. My name's John Franklin and I'm Head of Safety Promotion here at EASA. We've got hopefully potentially more than 1,000 people joining this session in two different ways. So just as we get started, I'd like to just give you a quick intro brief just so you know what to expect. So I think we've had more than 60, 70 questions already submitted through the Sli.do, and that's enabled us, as you'll see, to answer hopefully quite a lot of the perhaps simpler questions or more specific questions through a short presentation right at the beginning. We've got people who have joined through the WebEx. What you should see is a Sli.do in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, your WebEx control panel, and you can continue to answer questions or ask questions there. What we would also encourage you to do is look at the questions that are already there, and you can upvote the questions of those that you like. So it's obviously difficult if we have 20 questions that are almost identical. Better that rather than write the same thing is that you upvote the questions that you've got already there, if that makes sense. Now what we also have is people who've joined through the YouTube live stream, through the Together for Safety channel. And similarly in the YouTube, we have a chat that you should be able to then use, and we have 2 or 3 of us monitoring the chat and the Sli.do as we go through. Just to let you know, all of the material, the recordings, and then also the Q&A, and we'll give a short PPT presentation at the start, but we have a longer version. We'll post all of this on the AirOps community site. The first bit's right away this afternoon so that you can have access to that. You'll be able to review or share with anybody the YouTube recording almost immediately. So there's lots of things that you can access. And finally then, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our expert panel. So first of all, I'd like to introduce my colleague. Jean-Pierre, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, John, and thank you very much for organizing this session. My name is Jean-Pierre Arnaud. I am in charge of safety management activities for EASA. I am also the EASA representative at ICAO level to help ICAO to maintain and upgrade Annex 19. And I am also the project manager in charge of introduction of SMS into part 145 and part 21, so I will give you an update on that. Thank you.
Fantastic. And then our panelists. So Chris, maybe you can start with the introductions from your side.
Yes, hello everyone. My name's Chris Drew. Excuse me. On the SMS panel today. Really pleased to be here and try and join the conversation and get some interesting discussions going. I have an aviation background since a teenager, both civil and military, and been working with John and the safety team for a few years now. So pleased to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. Good you could join us, Chris. And Colin, if you can go next.
Hi there, everyone. As Chris said, delighted to be here and to share some thinking and some thoughts and some challenges with you all. Background as a safety director of 2 airlines, Thomas Cook and Flybe, and now currently head of safety for Lilium, one of the new eVTOL aircraft. So we're working across part 21 and ultimately into part 145 and AOC as well.
Fantastic, great. Thanks for joining us, Colin. And next, Amelia.
Hello, I'm very happy to be here with you and meeting you all. Looking forward to all your questions. Happy to support you. My background is in aviation data analysis and also specialism in safety management system. And now I worked also in airlines and eVTOL. So looking forward to your questions and having this session, hopefully helping everyone here as well. Thank you.
Fantastic, thanks. And last but not least, Neil.
Hi everyone, really good to be here. Really looking forward to the session, lots to discuss and really love to see what people are thinking and some of their challenges. Like a lot of people, aviation all my life, been working in the background with yourself, John, and look after lots of clients to help improve safety performance. So yeah, really looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic, thanks. And huge thanks to everybody who's joined us. As I say, hopefully we'll have more than 1,000 people online. As I say, we've got lots and lots of questions before we even started. So what we thought we'd do is kind of first of all cover off a few of those, And just by way of introduction, we thought the best thing to start with was just by kind of highlighting that safety management, particularly if you come from very much a kind of quality compliance world, we know with this evolution from part 21, part 145 particularly, safety management, potentially going to push you outside your comfort zone a little bit. Certainly it does us in the discussions that we have in terms of supporting effective SMS. It's a journey that helps us deal with our challenging environment in a changing world. We've seen with the COVID pandemic, with the war in Ukraine, all of these situations, that safety management helps us manage all of these situations that we could never hope to do in a purely compliance world. It's a journey that we're taking together, and hopefully we're there with you on this journey through webinars like this. We're going to continually keep the Sli.do Q&A open after the session and beyond, so we can continue to get your questions and hopefully be by your side and on this journey of learning, discovery, etc. together. Jean-Pierre, I know you've got a lot of answers you can give to the first batch of questions, so I'll hand straight over to you.
Yeah, and I can see there are some of the questions are already about regulatory update are already at the top of the list in the chat, so keep on inputting the chat. Thank you very much. So that's true that we have received a lot of questions about Part 21 and Part 145, so I will focus a little bit the presentation on that. But before starting, I want to tell you that now we are fully compliant with ICAO 19. We are late, especially for Part 21 and Part 145, but I am happy to say we are one of the first regulators in the world being fully compliant with Annex 19 by adopting recently the implementing rule with the European Commission for Part 21 and Part 145. So in the longer PowerPoint that we are going to share with you later, you will get all the hyperlinks where to access the new rules for 145 and Part 21. But for design and production, it will apply as from 7th of March 2023. And we will publish the AMC during this summer. And for Part 145, the text has been adopted a little bit earlier, so it will apply on the 2nd of December 2022. And the AMC and guidance material are ready, but we are still undergoing the proofreading and legal review process. So it's a matter of weeks, but it's going to be released out very soon. That was about the timeline for implementation of SMS into Part 21 and Part 145. As regard to, there are a number of questions about applicability of SMS, especially for Part 21. So let me tell you that SMS is applicable to Part Camo. Why? Because Part Camo is mandatory for an aerops operator engaged into commercial air transport operation. It is also mandatory for Part 145, no restriction. Why? Because most of the Part 145 carries out maintenance for commercial air transport operator, and it will be applicable in the Part 21 domain only for approved design organization and approved production organization. So basically POA and DOA. It doesn't apply to, for instance, alternative procedure to DOA. It doesn't apply for Subpart F organization where a production approval is not needed. It doesn't apply for what we call general aviation, so for instance, Part KO or light requirement of Part 21. There was a question as to whether this applied to STC or minor change or major change, and no, this is not the case. It doesn't apply. Again, it's the principle is an SMS is always linked to an approval, so to an approved organization to an approval certificate. So only to DOA and POA, so Support Golf and Support Juliet of Part 21. As regard to the AMC, the basic line that we have designed to follow for all the domain is to get the AMC line across all domain. Why do we do that? Because an operator may be also CAMO approved, may hold a maintenance organization, and in the other way, we have organization having multiple approvals, so such a design organizations. They also produce, manufacture, and they also maintain their product. So there was a need, there is an absolutely need to have all AMC aligned across all domains. So even if we have not released out publicly the AMC for Part 145, I do encourage you to have a look to the AMC for Part CAMO and SMS, because it will be basically a copy-paste exercise. For sure, we have adapted the terminology and so on. We will adopt the same approach for the Part 21 AMC. Having said that, there are some differences, especially in terms of regulatory structure. Part 21 is mainly product-centric, so it's a little bit disturbing as a regulator to fully copy-paste, but the principle will be exactly the same. If we can go to the next slide, John, it will be helpful to answer a number of questions in the chat box. So there was many questions about integration and integrated SMS. I'm not quite sure I am fully in a position to understand what is meant by integrated and integration, because there are many definitions around, or different perception depending on the population. But when we speak of compliance monitoring function and safety management function, yes, it is possible to integrate it. We do even recommend that integration, and this is why we call it management system in our regulatory system. In Part 145, you will find 145A200. This is called management system in Europe. So this is Oro Gen 200. This is also called management system because it integrates QMS and SMS. And by the way, there was a question in Part 145 why paragraph 145A65 about quality system has disappeared. It has not disappeared. It has been transferred to the management system because it is a subsystem of the management system. And this will be, and the management system will be also the placeholder for the integration of further subsystems. There is an opinion that has been brought to the European Commission about cyber security, and this will be exactly where you will integrate your information management system with the management system already hosting SMS and QMS. So having said that, it's always possible to integrate SMS also when an organization hold multiple approval. But in fact, as a matter of fact, it is left to the discretion of the organization to go for the principles is one SMS per approval certificate. But if you want to have a kind of corporate SMS approach, this is definitely possible, not to say recommended. Same thing for the SMS manual. You can build your system on a corporate SMS manual holding several approvals, several domains, or if you prefer to have a standalone approach for each approval certificate, it is your choice as an organization. And just to set the scene for the discussion that we are going to have now, I would like to make to build a little bit further on John's words, introductory words about this SMS, which is a different animal, which is new. We have all been grown up with the compliance paradigm. And we were all of opinion in the past, especially when I started my aviation career, that being compliant with the rule means being safe. But unfortunately, it has not been proven right. There are many unfortunate accidents about that. I would take, for instance, Fukushima. They were fully compliant with the nuclear rules, but unfortunately, they got that major accident because there were other risks not addressed by the rule that were not properly under control. So the main difference between quality and SMS is quality is about compliance. You may be compliant with ISO 9000. You may have a very robust compliance monitoring function, but it doesn't mean that nothing will go wrong. And this is exactly why we have this new animal called safety management, which is trying to better address safe operations. So the 4 basic questions by one SMS guru, Bill Voss, was, do you know your risk? How do you know them? How have you identified your hazard? What are you doing about the control of this risk? And how do you know that your mitigation action or barriers are effectively working? This is what SMS is about. And for sure, you can combine your compliance monitoring system with your safety management system. It's even recommended to the 2 systems to talk each other. I will take an example. Is the course of the compliance audit, the compliance monitoring manager identify a hazard which is not properly controlled, then it's good to pass this hazard to the safety management manager, to the safety manager, to establish proper and effective mitigation measure. And by the way, just before finishing, there was a number of questions whether the compliance monitoring manager and the safety manager can be combined in one single person. Yes, this is possible. I know that there is an exception in the aerodrome rule, but I'm not going to explain why. But yes, you can combine the 2 functions. You can have one single manager as long as the workload is manageable by only one person. Thank you very much, John. That was my, hopefully, I hope it set the scenes for today.
Fantastic. Thanks, JP. I think that was a great start. And so we've obviously heard from JP with all those different answers that have hopefully really helped to explain a large number of the questions that we get. So I think hopefully now's a good time for us to come to our panelists. And actually, I'm going to kind of double load this slightly. So the first kind of key question we were talking about, kind of focusing on, is, what does safety management mean to you, and what does safety mean to you in that context? And I think that links quite nicely to one of the top questions we have, which I'll highlight here, which is, how do we then ensure that safety management is not just a box ticking exercise in which risk assessments are just conducted, we get the desired outcome that we want, all of that, severity and likelihood, then largely depend on the assessor and their assumptions. We all know, we've talked about this many times. So JP's had his bit. Maybe Colin, I'll come to you first. From you've been involved in this, really at the sharp end in 2 operators. What's your view on that?
Yeah, it's very easy to fall into the trap that I've done the risk assessment, therefore I'm compliant, therefore I have a safety management system. That's not the intent. And again, to come back to JP's point, the intent is a mindset. safety management is a mindset. It's not something you achieve and then you're done. It's a constant way of working and way of thinking. People talk about being uneasy, chronically uneasy, in terms of, are we safe enough? Have we done enough? Are we comfortable with the amount of risk we're carrying? So to stop it being a box ticking exercise, the question I would ask people, and if I was being audited, I'd be looking to show that we're not just ticking a box, we're not just doing the paperwork, but actually that the decisions that we're making are being acted on. So if we do a risk assessment and we identify something that needs to be better controlled, better protected from, that we've taken the action, we can show the action has been implemented and that we're monitoring it to make sure that it's had the effect we wanted. So really the risk assessment is one of the first steps. The area I would be looking at is more, how are we monitoring and keeping on top of our risks rather than just doing the paperwork of doing the assessment itself. John, does that help a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's a great start. And I see, Chris, maybe you want to follow that up, and then we'll come to Amelia and then Neil. So Chris, do you want to go next, and then we'll follow Amelia?
Sorry, I didn't work with technology to put my hand up. Yeah, adding to what Colin said, I would also, my comment would be to avoid it being a tick box exercise, is really got to engage people and really got to make everyone able to see what's in it for them at all levels, especially the middle management of an organization who are very pressured, you know, to make the right outcomes commercially and operationally for the company. So we've got to make sure that SMS is seen as a value adding activity, not a bolt-on, something's part of their day job that really helps them achieve their performance aims. And of course, performance aims need to be including a balanced scorecard of things that we would, you know, class under safe outcomes as well. So that's another point I would add to Colin's point. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Chris. And Amelia, I'll come to you next on that one then.
Right, I was just wanted to raise this question for the public and for everyone actually. Risk management, right, is part of is a process, and we have to have the hazard log and everything. But at the end of the day, it's much more than that, right? It's a discussion, it's a way of thinking, it's a collaboration with the areas, and it shouldn't stop at writing down what we need to do to demonstrate to the regulator. It's continuously speaking with people, continuously advocating and having a risk and safety attitude and value in the company. And you have to see this in day-to-day operations, not only on the document. And this is why I think it's not just a tick box exercise. It's every day. What do we do about it? How do people think about safety? How do they implement it? And it's also, I think, on the interviews and on the discussions you have with the people when you go to the risk management process, I would suggest, for instance, not focusing on what you need to write, but actually raising the right questions for people. Help them understand what they need to do. Help them foster that culture where they actually think about risk and they can take it upon them then and learn to use this in their day-to-day operations, so they don't have to rely on the safety. Safety is there to facilitate other people to do their best at their jobs. So don't wait for the safety people to come to you and tell you what you need to do. It's for everyone to work together. So that's the message I wanted to raise.
And I think that's one of the biggest things, isn't it? It's that team effort of SMS and everything coming together with the operation, the activity. And maybe JP had something just to jump in with, and then Neil will come to you next.
Yes, when we speak of ticking the box, we are back to the concept of compliance. And as previously said, this is exactly the trap in which we do not want to fall in. The objective on SMS is to ensure you deliver safe operation. And if I had one recommendation when you implement an SMS or when you run an SMS, don't do it to please the regulator or to please your national competent authority. Do it for your own needs, to test the robustness and the safety of your operation. Please don't tick the box just to say I am compliant. Otherwise, I think you will miss the point.
And actually, I think we've got quite a highly upvoted question on oversight we'll come to in a second. But Neil, I'm sure you've got some thoughts on this one as well.
Yeah, and everything that's been said already, I wholeheartedly agree with. And I think for me, one of the biggest things that people have to create is purpose. You know, why have you got an SMS? And maybe even the term SMS gets in the way. You know, why do we manage safety? If we don't have a common purpose in our organization as to why we do what we do, how can we truly realign to that and have the right conversations, generate the right motivation, get the right engagement with our people? And it runs off the back of Jean-Pierre's point there, that if you're trying to be compliant and do it for somebody else, the point has been missed. This goes right back to purpose. You've got to have a reason for running an effective safety system, and ultimately that's to protect your business and your customers and the public, and we mustn't lose sight of that. And unfortunately, it can become a little bit of a regulatory need. So I think it's an ethical need, it's a business need, and one that protects the organisation.
Go on then, Colin. I see you've got your hand up.
I can't resist that. Just to follow on for that bit, the point I would make is, if you, as Neil and everyone said, if you understand the purpose of safety management and you build something that works for you, can pretty much guarantee it will also be compliant with the regulations. If you focus on complying with the regulations, you will build something that is very compliant, but it may not give you your return on investment. It may not actually work for you as a business. So you'll have a very compliant system that doesn't really work. But if you build it at the heart about caring for your people and the outputs of your company, then pretty much guarantee it will be compliant with the intent of the regulations, because that's what it's designed to do. So focus on what's good for your business, and then from that you will end up working closely with regulators who will support you because they can see you're doing it for the right reasons.
JP, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to add another point on that. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 crisis has been for us a very good ambassador of SMS, because at a point the aircraft did not fly anymore, the pilots did not fly anymore, the mechanics, the maintenance engineer did not carry out maintenance anymore, the air traffic controller did not control the traffic anymore. And this is not the way we have designed the rule. We were supposed to, people are supposed to work on a daily basis. So the only best response we had to COVID-19 is to reconsider whether operations were safe, considering the disturbing change that the crisis brought. And I can give many examples or type of hazards, like massive retirement of people who were furloughed, or loss of knowledge, lack of resources, lack of financial restriction of so on and so on. This is exactly where you need to reconsider whether your operations are safe and how you are going to go through the crisis. And I am afraid that there will be more crises ahead of us. So this is exactly what SMS is about.
Yeah, and I think we've had so many really practical examples over the last 2 years, obviously, that highlights the importance of what we're talking about here. So thanks for those questions. So we'll come to this next one, and I'll highlight this one. It's the top question here. So how do we ensure effective oversight of SMS? Just checking the existence of certain requirements hardly relates to the actual operation. And then follow on to that is then, Jean-Pierre particularly, I'm sure we'll have views on this in a minute, is which skills are required by auditors? How deep does an auditor have to get involved in an organisation to verify a safety culture or review a risk assessment? And Amelia, I'll come to you first, because I know this is something you've got some interesting insights in.
Thank you. Well, it's a quite interesting question about effectiveness, because everyone measures effectiveness differently and everyone understands effectiveness differently. So I will start with the basis. In terms of establishing an SMS, right, we have different tools and different guidance material you can use to establish the basis. And of course, you have to follow the regulation, make sure everything is in place. But that's just the basis. So there, if you go on the management system criteria, evaluation for the SMS, that's present and suitable, fine. But what do you do afterwards to become effective on that scale, or effective in day-to-day activities. So there's where your safety training, safety promotion, overall safety culture comes in. It's the whole organization coming in to support you flourish the SMS and including all the areas of the business, because it's not only for the safety team, again, to establish this SMS is for everyone else to support. So even though at the beginning it's just processes, manuals, policies, and all of these things we need to demonstrate to the regulator we have in place, there's way much more we need to do afterwards. And this is where we combine it, for instance, with risk management, because it can be a risk-based approach. Depending on where your risks are, you need to focus more on those things and ensure you have all the mitigation in place and all the measures to manage that. And again, there is no one size fits all. It really depends on the organization, their business, because some organizations might have a higher risk appetite than others, and some of them might want to contribute more than others on safety. But at the end of the day, it's all working together, trying to bring safety forefront of our operation, trying to do the best for our business and for our operations. And for the auditor part, I think I need to pass it to Jean-Pierre now.
Yeah, in fact, I'll come to you maybe in a minute, JP. And I think maybe Neil, maybe if I come to you now, because I know you've worked quite a lot on both sides of, with operators and organisations, but also with regulators as well. What are your thoughts on this challenge?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's a natural extension of the previous debate we had around purpose. If you don't understand the overall purpose that you collectively, the individual strategies and tactics that you have may themselves be just floating in the air and having no purpose in their own right. But I think going to the question, I think we've got to take a different approach. Even the word auditing, you could argue, is getting a little bit kind of narrow in its application, and thinking, of course, yes, we have a role for auditing, but if we're talking oversight, if we just think a little bit broader there, and it's going to apply to internal auditors or even regulatory auditors, and thinking of them as a bit more of a facilitator, a bit more collaborative, a bit more being able to have the right conversations. If we go into an organization looking for things and looking for just hard evidence, what that's instantly doing is probably not engaging people. So I'm a big believer in that the whole system has to have that engagement, and that extends into oversight. And of course, that itself is an attribute and a competence that people have to move into to be able to have the right conversations, be much more collaborative, and be seen as a bit more of a facilitator in that role.
Yeah, thanks for that, Neil. And Chris, maybe you could follow up with some thoughts of yours on that.
Yeah, thanks, John. I was just going to sort of tag on to the word that Neil used there, which is competence. And I know that, it's quite a big shift, as JP indicated initially, in terms of mindset here and how to understand the intent of what safety management systems are trying to do in the specific domains that we're talking about here. I mean, if you think about, Part 21, they've got an amazingly mature safety management system from a technical point of view. So how do you shift people to understand how SMS can be helpful in Part 21 with some practical examples, some really useful things for the organization to be able to focus on? And then how does the regulator go in and make a really good assessment of that? And of course, there's the competence development requirement for us all in management systems, but also in the regulator. I know that there's some great examples out there right now, strategies to improve and to fill the gaps where competence might need to be changed based on the new requirements of SMS. So I think that'll be a really key point. And the ongoing checking and making sure we're going in the right direction of that competence will be key over the next few years.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Chris, and maybe come to JP now, because I know certainly there's lots of tools and lots of things that JP's doing that maybe are worth mentioning in this context.
Yeah, before mentioning literature and tools available about how to oversee or to generally we say to assess an SMS. I just would like to point to the fact that, again, don't do an SMS, do not implement an SMS to please your competent authority. And so my recommendation is an organization should collect any kind of data of safety information to better know about the threats within the organization. And then it comes to having safety discussion about the meaning of these safety or data information. Do we control that risk correctly, sufficiently, etc., etc. It's not an easy question, and I will I immediately understand that there will be a discussion between the assessor and the organization. But the idea is to understand what type of safety information are reported to the safety review board or to the high-level safety committee, what type of safety discussion it takes place at senior management level, and what type of decision have been taken based on these pieces of information. And for me, the role of an assessor at this point will be to understand these decisions and this type of information that are reported to the senior management, even to challenge the decision if necessary, and then to decide whether the decisions taken by the organization are the right decisions. This is what is about assessment of an SMS. Having said that, there are a number of literature available. You can go to the SMICG website. I will, in the longer version of the slide, we will provide you with the hyperlinks. But EASA has also developed an EASA management system assessment tool available on the website. So I do encourage to use it, even for self-assessment, for internal oversight. But I would like also to mention to kill two birds with one stone. Yes, there is one question in the chat. Could you provide us some risk example related with the design organization approval? I just want to inform you that the design and production community, so ASD, Gamma, EAC, etc., they have delivered, they have written a document, International Industry Standard, SM001. And so first, in that document, you will find a list of hazards for production and design organization. So I definitely encourage you to read that document. But there is also a specific appendix in that document to assess an SMS, self-assessment. So this is another tool available on how to oversee an SMS. And for sure, we will provide you with the hyperlinks in our slides.
Perfect, thanks for that. And maybe, Colin, you've gone through this process quite a number of times. Maybe you could give a bit of insight into kind of what that process looks like from the organisation side.
Yeah, so the oversight bit, an audit once a year doesn't give the regulator oversight of how effectively you're managing safety as an organisation. It comes from a collaborative approach. For example, is your auditor or surveyor attending your safety review boards? Are they safety review boards? Do you share the minutes of all your safety review boards with them? Because that's the way you build confidence and a confident relationship. It's by being open with them. Don't wait for them to come once a year. I'll give you an example. Unfortunately, both the airlines I was head of safety for went through significant financial difficulties, one at Thomas Cook, one at Flybe. Very quickly, as we were seeing those financial challenges hit us, we were talking with the regulators. We were talking with our surveyors and auditors saying, we've got this sort of problem. It's a threat to our safe operation, partly because of distraction, because of the decisions that were being made, the resources available, etc. So we actually did formal risk assessments of the situation. We then discussed those at our safety review boards formally. We made decisions, the accountable manager made decisions, he placed actions, we tracked those actions, and we shared those actions again with the regulators. So we were demonstrating an effective management system in the conduct of our business. We didn't do it because we wanted the regulator to know we were doing it. We did it because it was a good way to manage what was a significant safety challenge in our business that was unique to us. It wasn't a common thing. It wasn't a compliance-driven thing. It was, excuse my language, we were in the shit. financially, and therefore we needed to manage and manage the threat. So we did it, but we shared it and we collaborated with our regulators, which meant as we were going through it, they had confidence that we were managing safe operations throughout, which is why they didn't stop us from operating. They allowed us to continue operating for a period of time until we decided to stop, because they had confidence in the way we were managing safety. So I think that's, to me, that is what oversight is. It's not a once a year annual audit where they come and look for artifacts and evidence. It's about having a strong relationship where they get confidence. That's what an effective SMS allows you to do, or an effective management system allows you to do.
Thanks for that, Colin. I think hopefully all those points gave a great insight into that question, and we'll move on to the next one now. And I'll highlight this next one at the top as kind of an example, a question, but actually we're going to cover it in a slightly broader context. So the question itself is, could you provide some risk examples related with the design organization approval? And actually, we had there are quite a few questions that we got about lists of risks and hazards and safety issues, and I think this is where maybe I'll come to you, Neil, first. It's as much about the importance of understanding. It's not about having a list and some examples and just work through those. It's so much more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, this is one of the conversations that probably burns a heck of a lot of time in this particular subject matter. And excuse me, my dog's just having a bit of a grumble downstairs. But and I think it's important to be clear on what we're trying to achieve, and this goes back to purpose and objectives. And I think we have to look at this through the lens of primarily we're running SMS to ultimately preserve life and support the organization and support safe operations of aeroplanes. And if we take a total system view of that starts kind of orientating service providers and clarifying what their role is towards all of that. But of course, it's not as simple as just looking at it through that lens. There are other things, as Colin alluded to, financial pressures and contractual issues and non-service provider organizations impacting on that. So there's clearly quite a lot of things that go on around the operation, but it's having that clarity, because the part of the danger is that you can manage lots of risk but still not actually be looking at the right things. And that's one thing we have to get right going forwards, is what's the purpose, what's the clarity, and having some kind of reference point or perspective against which we are making those vital decisions that Colin alluded to.
And actually, maybe, Neil, from that, if we come back to Colin, because I know you've got quite a unique situation now where you're particularly looking at the link, not just between operations, but then how that links to product safety and all of the different aspects of what you're doing now.
Yeah, I think it stems from part of the understanding of what's the management system there for, and particularly when you start looking at SMS into Part 21 or management system approach in Part 21, we're not trying to duplicate the safety engineering, systems engineering that's already happening in the certification, etc. of the aircraft. That's being covered. So product safety and the hazards involved in what might cause a failure of a system in an aircraft, that's not what the management system approach in Part 21 is about. The management system approach in Part 21 is helping us to understand what might put at risk or cause failures in our ability to deliver a safe design. So it's more about setting up the organization to be safe. So if I put in that context, what is the one thing you don't want to happen in a design organization? And to phrase my own answer, the one thing you don't want to happen in a design organization is to release an unairworthy design or an unsafe design. So everything you do based on the regulations and all the other stuff you do on top of the regulations is all around preventing the release of an unairworthy design. If you put that question at the heart of your management system approach, then what are all the things that might lead to the unsafe release of the release of an unsafe design? If that works and you can understand that concept, then that automatically your hazards and threats suddenly become visible. So, for example, threats like human factors, distraction in an open plan design office with lots of background conversation, but people trying to do detailed design work and calculations. There's a threat to the release of a safe design. So thinking that, I tend to use the bow tie models here and talk about the top event for a design organization and a production organization. And then from that, we can then build up what do we look like in terms of protecting ourselves from that top event, that release of an unairworthy design or the release of an unairworthy product. I think that's where we look for the hazards and threats questions in part 21, rather than trying to duplicate the certification type hazard work that's already well covered.
Yeah, I think you've covered that really well, and hopefully I think that gives a great insight into certainly the thread that we got in many of the questions around the challenges of identifying risks and just the general implementation of SMS. Chris, I know this is something you've been working with with all sorts of different organisations in lots of different domains and disciplines. What can you add on that one?
I'm amplifying what Colin just said. The difference between the management system approach and the sort of technical safety of design products is spot on. And as an example of that, we've seen a few instances where, and not forgetting that these regulations also bring in human factors to the picture in in the safety training and the considerations of threats to safe output. So you think about fatigue, and we've seen some examples where around certification time, workload is massively high, people are very fatigued, and we've seen a couple of instances where those errors have got through to products on wing or in the cabin, and real impact to finance, to operations, to reputation, to all sorts of aspects that we're trying to prevent harm to with our safety management system. So I think, again, going back to mindset, it's a key message here that we have those differences between humans in the system, of the management system, and how that then performs to give you the safe product that we're all looking for in terms of our objectives in our business, whether it's design or production, part 145, part M, etc. So I think that's a massive message we need to get through here.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And Neil, if I come back to you, and then we'll do Neil, Amelia, and then I'll come back to JP. Sounds great.
Yeah, just want to add to really what Colin and Chris said, and I think sometimes the language of risk can get in the way. I think we've been bombarded with risk language since SMS came along, and it's caused quite a storm, really. And I think that can generate a mindset of looking at individual things and almost having to risk assess everything. And actually, that's not what he was saying. It's about reducing the chance of harm to a low level, as Colin alluded to very early on. Are we doing the utmost in our efforts, in our systems, to reduce the chance of harm to our operation and to the equipment? I think that's just a softer way of talking about risk and not getting caught up with all the terminology and all that goes with it. It's, are we doing enough? Is the level of risk we're carrying acceptable to us and society and the industry? And that's ultimately what we're trying to do. I think if we shift that paradigm in our heads a little bit, it can pull us away from trying to risk assess everything that we feel isn't quite right and creating lots of bureaucracy. So I think just a slight shift in mindset can help us go forwards there.
And actually, it's interesting that you say that. There's an interesting question that somebody put in the chat, actually, that so they're in an operator where they're looking at their current compliance processes versus the traditional the safety committees, and bringing those together and the bureaucracy that kind of surrounds the process. I think that's where the conversations that you have in the organization to try and streamline the process to a common goal, I guess, is the kind of the key fundamental thing.
Yeah, and as Colin alluded to as well, the compliance, and I know it's to some it's not a word that we particularly like, but we're talking effective compliance here. Risk assessing that is not an option. That's put on us through the rules. We shouldn't be looking at risk assessing, for example, lack of something. That's not what it's about. So we've got to kind of move beyond that and maybe talk about, what's an acceptable level of risk in our operation and how do we determine it. I think that will just help generate the right conversations with the resources and the capability that we have.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's it's a great summary of that kind of wider discussion there. Amelia, can I come to you next?
Yeah, actually, my colleagues already covered all the things we needed to say. Actually, I wanted to raise more of a question here, because it feels like we are focusing very much on the tools and processes and procedures and compliance requirements. Sure, we have to have all of that, but why are we doing all of this? Why are we trying to follow what all the documentation is there? We have to first understand our business and what are our risks and try to make it work for us. It's not that we have to have hundreds of SSRBs with all the people and so on. We have to have the right SSRBs with the right people there and make it work for us. And then we use that to demonstrate that we cover our risks and safety properly, and we know what's happening in our business and we do something about it. So I think, yeah, I would. My favorite question is why? Why are we doing this? How do we come back to our why for safety?
Yeah, I couldn't have put it any better myself. I'll come to JP now.
Yeah, thanks. I want first to promote again this excellent job made by the Part 21 community. This is this international industry standard where you have a list of threats. Having said that, so I do invite you to read that document. But having said that, there is no list of threats on the shelf. Yes, you have to understand your business, your context, your local risk, your constraints, and so on and so on. And based on that, you can start to identify threats. And when we go to computing severity versus likelihood, this is where it doesn't apply. It's not standard from one organization to another. But just to try to answer the question from a practical point of view and to quote a few threats, it has been well expressed earlier with delivery of product under time pressure. We want to be sure that the product is airworthy, and fortunately we have recent bad story about that. If I point to, again, the COVID-19 crisis, we had a lack of competencies, lack of resources. So how does it impact, for instance, the support in terms of if you take the storage procedures? I was in contact with major design organizations. They told me, we have never tested on a great scale our storage procedure because the aircraft were supposed to fly. But with COVID-19, it was the first time where some aircraft were stuck on the ground for more than 12 months. And they realized that their procedures were not effective. We are not addressing sufficiently some risk related to long storage. Same thing about support, airworthiness support, how to de-store, to get the aircraft back to operation when the aircraft was stuck on the ground for more than 12 months. This is quite an interesting topic, and design organizations, they have learned a lot about this risk. How financial difficulties may impact also the airworthiness design of your product. This is this kind of risk that should be properly managed.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually one of the things that we've got it in the YouTube live stream chat, and then also I know there's been a few questions on this about, for example, if you're in a camo or, in I guess any organization that's not directly operating the aircraft, is how can that your organization in that context mitigate actions outside your competence? And as we're talking about, it's not necessarily mitigating things outside your competence, but it's the effect of your activities on the final operation outside your doors. That's the important thing.
And in terms of interfaces, it is important that all organizations speak to each other. And for the design organization, the point is, how do my products that I have designed behave in operations? That's very important to connect the dots.
Yeah, and I think so. We're coming up towards the end of the time here. Yeah, we tried to cover a lot of ground. Hopefully, the PPT at the start helped. Certainly, there's a couple of points. Certainly, that we've had a few questions, lots of questions about reporting and that kind of thing, and we'll put answers to particularly that part, but as much as we can, as quickly as possible, up on the community side. Particularly, there's also some comments about performance monitoring and particularly about SPIs. And one thing also worth mentioning is we have through the EASA Data for Safety project, more work, particularly on organisations kind of bringing their data sets together, being able to benchmark against each other, and particularly from that, there'll be a lot of learning in terms of sharing performance indicators and really kind of sharing what's effective and helping this cross benchmarking and those kind of things. So it's worth mentioning that. And just as a kind of final wash up, and I'll come kind of in, maybe I could go backwards this time and start with you, Neil, is just as a final kind of thought from each of you on what would you recommend, particularly for people perhaps new to SMS or who come from the compliance world, or just people who struggle with the challenges and complexity of SMS, what would be the one piece of advice you would give? Neil, come to you first.
Oh, cracky! One thing. That's a heck of a question. That's a heck of a question, John. For me, I think living off my experience, I think we've got to take a bit of a step back from the noise of safety management and be absolutely clear what the point is and what the purpose is. And that's not for a regulator to tell you. That's for you as an organization to understand your role in the bigger system, what you bring to the party, and what it means to you. And I think that itself can take quite a lot of time to mature and to coalesce into a clear objective for that organization. If you don't do that, everything else you do is hanging in thin air and it just becomes a load of stuff. So I think you've got to create absolute clarity as to why you come to work that day in terms of safety.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Neil. Amelia, come to you next. Put you on the spot.
Sure. I was just thinking now a lesson that I learned myself. So as an aerospace engineering, I always looked at processes and procedures and data, and I loved them, honestly. But working in safety, I learned that it's much more than that, and I have to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and look at the people. So this is just a kind reminder for everyone that even if you have all the processes and everything in place, that doesn't mean your SMS is effective. You have to look at the people, speak to them, learn from them, and create this culture where everyone can contribute. So yeah, I hope everyone go on the same journey. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Amelia. And Colin, will come to you next.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest point, it's about the management of safety. I'm not going to talk about safety management system because that implies more process and compliance, but the management of safety is about caring for and protecting your team, the people you work with, your customers, and your operation or your organization. That's why we do it. We don't do it for compliance reasons. So do it for the right reason. Once you set that as your goal, then everything else will fall into place because it gives you that focal point, as Neil keeps on saying, your purpose. You're doing it to protect and care for the people around you and the people you deliver your services to. The other bit is that actually we've all got a part to play. It doesn't matter which part of the aviation sector we're in, whether it's design, ATO, training, wherever. We've all got a part to play to deliver safe operations. Ultimately, it's moving people and cargo from one place to another, or whatever the output of your operation is. That's why we do it. So think that we've got to work together, and the interfaces are vital. Don't build silos. Don't build an SMS without talking or thinking about where your impact might end up. So those are probably, sorry, more than one, but two key points for me.
Yeah, fired there.
We'll let you off, Colin. I think you've been disciple enough to get away with between 2 and 5 points. Fantastic. And Chris, I'll come to you next.
Drew the short straw. I think a lot of it's been covered. I just want to point out, we've talked about compliance, we talked about safety. Of course, in reality, a lot of our safety is done by effective and well-managed compliance based on yesterday's accidents and bad news. So I think let's make sure we're not forgetting compliance. Effective compliance is a big part of your safety management picture. And I just reiterate that people do safety, not processes, and context is king. And those are the three things I'd like to say.
Fantastic. Excellent, Chris. And lastly, JP, come to you.
I would say do not implement or run an SMS to please the competent authority or just to be compliant. I would recommend just collect safety data or safety information as much as possible to assess how safe your operations are.
Perfect. What a way to finish. So huge thanks to our panelists, huge thanks to everybody that joined in the two streams, and thanks for your questions. As I say, I've posted in the chat there the link to the community site topics page where we'll put all the topics, and later on today I'll post an initial topic with the PPTs, the link to the YouTube, and a quick summary of the kind of initial point, and then we'll continually update that and improve it and host more events like this. Yeah, we'll see what are the key topics, maybe do some surveys to see what people want to have other sessions on. And we look forward to seeing you at future webinars and events like this in the future. And hopefully at some of our events, we might actually get to meet in person soon. So thanks again. Again, huge thanks to all our panelists for your input and your time today. And yeah, all the best. And Chris, particularly enjoy Lisbon and the Heli Offshore Conference this weekend.
Thank you.
Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.